Hello.
So before we start, I kind of just want to explain that this is a very special Q&A. It's an interactive Q&A. So we have people obviously in the audience. We also have people online. There you go. Hi, Ben. Hi.
Hi, Ben. Hi, hello, hi. Hello there. Hi, Ben. Hi, Ben. It's all very creative.
And they are actually, the camera is just there, and we're streaming this live on Love Film. So we've had lots of people.
Whoops.
So we've had lots of people in the chat room for the past hour and a half wanting to ask you lots of questions. We've had people as far afield as Mexico and Greece and France and Belgium and the Netherlands.
One person has said anything about me so far, not one.
I think Marianne said something about you.
That's good.
So before we open up to the audience and take some questions from the online element, Nick, can you tell me a bit about the film? And obviously it's based on a book called I Was Bono's Doppelganger. When did you first read the book, and how did it sort of travel from being a book to a film?
I read the book, well actually I heard Neil McCormick being interviewed on the radio, and I thought to myself, this isn't the most extraordinary story for a comedy. Here's a kind of here's a guy that went through the late 70s and early 80s, passionately trying to make it in the movie business, in the film business, in the music business, and completely failing. And the idea of somebody failing that miserably and failing with such passion and joy was to me a great source material for a comedy. So I looked at the book and I thought, well, how do you translate a book which is basically episodic and a series of incidents into a story? So then I went and invited two writers called Ian Lafreniere and Dick Clement, who wrote The Commitments and who've done a lot of good comedy work, and they translated a very sprawling episodic story into a simple narrative.
And how long has it taken you to get it from script to screen?
This one has taken, I think, about 5 or 6 years. And I think The Hole, I did a movie called The Hole, and that took about the same time. So sometimes when you make movies that you actually genuinely just want to do and nobody else does, they take this time. But when you make movies for the studios or for other people, they take less. But this has taken about 5 or 6 years.
Thank you. And Ben, how did you get involved in the project?
I was sitting in my in a trailer in Brisbane in Australia, filming one of the Narnia films, and this brown envelope sort of was shoved under the door, and I started reading it and started sort of giggling to myself at this man's life, and then I found myself by about page 8. I had my sort of Narnian sword, and I was sort of pretending it was a guitar and sort of strutting up and down the trailer, pretending to be this ridiculous Irish man. And I thought, this is really funny and clever. And by the end, I thought I was kind of feeling a bit sorry for this man, and thinking this is a bit like the sort of anti-Hollywood story. It's not the kind of, you don't get your Adrian, kind of rocky ending that you kind of think you might get about halfway through the film, and so it was interesting to me for it to be the sort of opposite of the Hollywood dream. It's a story about losers who don't make it, and that's kind of quite funny.
Very funny.
But it was probably the first script that sort of made me giggle on every page, and I thought it's very difficult to be pragmatic. As an actor, I think, sort of trying to decide what you want to do next, because the choices that are available to you are never the choices that are available to anybody else. So you can't say, I want to be like him or have a career like that person. You've only got certain options in front of you. And I thought this would be one I'd be really frustrated if it was someone else playing this, because I think it'd be really interesting for me to go from playing sort of quite earnest characters, which I have done in a lot of things. Every character I've ever played has been from a novel or a book or some sort of famous source material, and so I thought it'd be good to play a character from a book no one's read.
Well, also, I just add to that he might have received that brown envelope on Australia. Then he sent me, because I was casting at the time, and he sent me an audition tape And I have to say, I put the tape in and I watched it in my office, and everybody in the office just went, "Jesus, that's brilliant. That's brilliant."
It was brilliant.
And there was a moment. It was brilliant. There was a moment where we just went, "Oh my God, you'd done the accent, you'd worked on the thing."
Do you know?
And Ben got cast, and then we talked on the phone, and we were suitably rude to each other.
You abused me,
and I abused him, and then we went from there. So he did a great.
He said, "Why do I want some Disney prince in my movie?" Do you know,
I don't remember saying that.
Do you know Will Poulter, who's brilliant in The Son of Rambo, and he's in one of the Narnia films as well. He read my audition with me, so you can hear him in the background doing a kind of Irish voice, but his voice hadn't quite broken yet. So that's what you can hear in the background on my audition tape. It's quite funny.
Shall we open it up to the audience? Does anyone have any questions? Don't be shy. Oh, right. Yes, right in the middle. There's a raving mic. So if you don't mind speaking into the...
Hi, this is Ben. Hi. Basically, you have a dialect coach for Narnia when it came to the Mediterranean accent.
I did, yes, for the first one.
Did you have to have a dialect coach for this one, or...?
Actually, the same man. It was a man called William Conacher who sort of helped me with my dialect stuff for Prince Caspian, and then in the next one, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the director went, "Let's not have that ridiculous accent in this one." Okay, it's probably a good idea. And then I had the same dialect coach for this, but the budget for this film was kind of stretched quite thin, I think it's fair to say, before we started. And so we could only afford him for 2 hours instead of the sort of traditional 5 months. So I had him for 2 hours before I went, but then I made a sort of decision to stay in the accent from the time that I landed in Ireland to rehearse all the way through to the end of the film, even when I was sort of in the evenings and everything. But I just spent a lot of time hanging out with Robert Sheehan, who plays Ivan, my little brother, and I thought, well, if I can try to sound as much like him as possible, then hopefully by default I'll also sound Irish. So we spent a lot of time together, watching films and, in the pub and sort of testing myself in. But Belfast is the worst place on earth to try to do a Dublin accent.
Ben, I think, decided to be Irish after the movie, didn't you?
I wanted to stay Irish. But I thought people might notice. But otherwise I would have.
I think we have a question from online. We have the voice of online down here.
Yeah, it's gone a bit crazy, actually. So we've just kept this one question from Mary Ann, which is on screen now. Ben, you've been studying literature and played in several movies that are based on books. Have you ever considered writing your own?
But my life story would be a boring story about an actor playing parts from other people's books. So I think it'd be very short and probably quite boring at this point.
You'll be unsurprised to hear there's been a lot of that.
Lemon finds me attractive.
I am an online person called I Am the Walrus asked what was the easiest thing to do on the movie and what was the hardest thing for you to do on the movie.
The easiest thing was the very bad dancing. That came very naturally to me. Actually, I tried to learn the guitar for the film. As soon as I got cast, I was still in Australia when Nick called me to say I got the part. And I was very excited, and I bought a guitar and tried to learn how to play it. And then as soon as I got on set, having studied for 3 whole weeks, Nick said, you look much more ridiculous without the guitar, so let's lose that. So the dancing was probably the easiest. What was the hardest thing? I don't know.
I think the hardest thing was just making plausible all those ludicrous and ridiculous events that took place, and all those decisions, and making those decisions that Neil made as a character in the movie plausible to himself as an actor, because you have to believe that you're doing the right thing. The movie rests on the character being an idiot, but being an idiot and really believing that he's not an idiot.
And I think still the film, talking to the people who have seen it, it splits people. I mean, some people are just aggravated with him all the way through to the end and want to give him a slap and sort of explain to him that he's ruining his life. And other people kind of start to feel empathy for him or feel a bit sorry. And I think it's probably based on, your experiences in your own life, if you've ever sort of experienced that kind of ambition or that kind of drive for a particular goal, and succeeded or not. I think that sort of helps you either how much that helps, how that informs how much you relate to that journey or not. But finding that balance, I think, was probably the hardest thing between sort of empathy and plonker.
And how does Neil feel about the film? The real Neil?
Actually, Neil, apart from going through a kind of minor psychological crisis when he first saw the movie, has now come round and enjoys the film in terms of its own humour and the celebration of that, and is reconciled to the idea that now his life story has now been retold again. The funny point is that Ivan actually now believes that's the truth, that actually he did actually stop him being in U2. I mean, so now within the family of the McCormicks, there's a rift where Ivan actually believes that Neil actually did ruin his life. Also,
the first time that the real Gloria saw the film, she got really, really upset with the real Neil. And the real Neil couldn't work out why, and eventually, sort of over dinner after watching the film, he went, "What is your problem? What's wrong?" And she was like, "You slept with that woman." And he said, "I didn't really. That was completely made up. Ben Barnes did that in the film. Like, it's completely made up, fictionalized for the sake of the story." And he said, "Then why are you upset?" And she was like, "Well, it's just like something you would have done." Brilliant.